So let's talk about the mechanism of reaction of the halogenation, because in the first step what we did is just like a scene. In every movie we have what we call scene and behind the scene. Behind the scene is what actually make up of the movie, but actually we don't actually know what happens behind the scene, or without the behind the scene then the scene is nonsense. So let's look at the behind the scene of this reaction, the mechanism of our halogenation reaction. In the halogenation reaction of methane, we said we have our methane CH4 reacting with a chlorine to give the first product, which we said a chloromethane and a hydrogen chloride at about 500 Kelvin as the temperature. So how does this happen? Something really happens. Something really makes this to happen. It makes this to occur. So we are going to look at the reaction mechanism of this halogenation. First of all, let's consider chlorine. Chlorine is diatomic. Why is it diatomic? Because we all know chlorine has an atomic number of 17. Having an atomic number of 17 makes chlorine outermost shell not to be complete. So the outermost shell of a chlorine atom has 7 electrons. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So we have only 7 electrons here, but according to the octet rule, for this outermost shell to be stable, it needs what? 8 electrons. But what we have for chlorine is 7 electrons. This means chlorine needs more 1 electron for it to be stable. We're having just 7 electrons. It needs more 1 electron to be stable. And that is why chlorine is diatomic. So having 2 chlorine atoms with 7 electrons each, when they come together to form a kind of covalent bonding, it makes them stable. So if we have the first chlorine having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, then another chlorine atom 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. This needs 1 more electron and this needs 1 more electron. So they will combine in a kind of covalent bond, which will make them to be what? To be stable. We have it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And this makes them what? Diatomic. That is why our chlorine is what? Diatomic. For it to be stable, for it to obtain that octet rule. So for this reaction to take place at 500 degrees and at 500 Kelvin, what happens is our diatomic chlorine in the first step. Okay, let's take it. In the first step, we have initiation. We call it initiation. And what happens in this initiation is our diatomic chlorine will dissociate into 2 chlorine atoms. So this bond will be broken down and this bond will be broken down. It will dissociate into what? 2 chlorine atoms. We have this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The first chlorine atom, or you call it radical, and the second one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So this is the first step. When we mix a methane and a chlorine, the first step is what we call the initiation step. In the initiation step, our chlorine molecule will dissociate into 2 chlorine atoms or radicals. And then the second step is what we call the chain propagation. It's chain propagation step. In the step 2, this step 2 is divided into what? 2 other steps. In the first step, what happens is our radical here, our chlorine atom, will react with our methane. This is our methane. Do not be confused. This is methane. We have carbon and 4 hydrogen. 1 carbon and 4 hydrogen. 3 and 1 makes up 4 hydrogen. So this chlorine atom, or we call it radical, that was gotten from this dissociation will react with what? Our methane. And in this reaction, hydrogen will be abstracted. This chlorine will abstract hydrogen here. Therefore, this bond will be broken. If this bond is broken, we'll be having what? 2 electrons. The abstraction of hydrogen will lead to 1 electron being removed or being moved with hydrogen to be added to what? Our chlorine. So what we'll be having as a product would be our hydrogen with 1 electron combining with this other electron, and then our chlorine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then what is left here would be just this methyl and then 1 electron. All right, this should be plus. Should be plus, and then just 1 electron. So we call this methyl radical. Methyl radical. Then these are hydrogen chloride. Hydrogen chloride. What really happens here is our chlorine reacts with what? Methane. And in the reaction, hydrogen was abstracted by this bond being broken. And once this bond is broken down, 1 electron will be taken or be moved with hydrogen to combine with our chlorine here. So we'll be having this hydrogen, which is what we're having here. We're having 1 electron, which is this electron, with this second electron here, and then our chlorine here. What will be left here would be our methyl radical. This is the methyl, our methyl radical. This is the methyl, and then 1 electron added to it to make it what? Radical. This is the first step in the chain propagation. And then in the second step, we will have our chlorine molecule. This is our chlorine molecule. Reacting with our methyl radical. This is our methyl radical. And then there will be a movement of electron. This will be moved, and this also will be moved. So our methyl radical here would combine with 1 of the chlorine atom here. 1 of this chlorine atom will be moving with what? 7 electron, while this second one will be moving with what? 7 electron. This one moving with the first 7 electron will be attached to what? Our methyl radical. So we'll be having the first chlorine having 7 electrons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then we add our methyl radical here. This is our methyl radical. You know, this chlorine went with 7 electrons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This other electron is gotten from our methyl radical to make everything here stable. And then what will be left here would be a chlorine radical. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. This is what we call chloro methane. This reaction will be continuous till all the chlorine atoms are used up, all the hydrogen atoms are used up in the system. The reaction will be continuous until all the hydrogen atoms are used up from the system. So if we sum reaction A and what B. What we'll be having at the end of the day is we're having our methane reacting with what? Our chlorine, diatomic chlorine, to give the first thing we add there for the reaction B is what? Chloromethane. Our chloromethane. And our what? Hydrogen chloride. This is our hydrogen chloride, which is the same thing we got in this what? Reaction. This is like the mechanism of the reaction. What really happens in this halogenation what? Reaction. So in the last step of this reaction is what we call the termination step. The termination what? Step. Termination step. In termination, what happens is two radicals meet together. So when two radicals react, it will lead to a hot in the system. For example, when we have a chlorine radical reacting with another chlorine radical, this will give what? A chlorine what? Molecule. So once this happens in the system, it means there will be a hot in the reaction. That is to say, all the possible reactions has taken place. So this is the mechanism of our halogenation what? Reaction. We only did just one mechanism, which stands for how chloromethane and hydrogen chloride is formed. If we keep on this reaction by reacting this chloromethane with another chlorine, we will get what we call our dichloromethane, like we said. So this is the mechanism of what? Of reaction. We can do this for our dichloromethane, we can do it for our trichloromethane, and we can also do this for our tetrachloromethane. So finally, don't forget that there are three steps in our mechanism of what? Reaction. The first step is the initiation step, where our chlorine molecule will dissociate into two chlorine what? Atoms, or you call it what? Radicals. What makes this to happen is as a result of this 500 Kelvin, or you call it 520 Kelvin, which the reaction was substituted into. So when our methane reacts with chlorine under 500 Kelvin or 520 Kelvin, the first step is that our chlorine will dissociate into what? Chlorine what? Radicals. From there, in our chain propagation, the chlorine radical will have to react with what? Our methane, and in that process, hydrogen will abstracted to the chlorine to form our what? Our chlorine, our hydrogen chloride, and a methyl radical will be formed. In the chain propagation of reaction 2, which we call the B, our chlorine will have to react with our radical. This is the chlorine molecule here. The chlorine molecule will react with what? The radical to form chloromethane, and then our chlorine here. Finally, when we sum A and B, we will get our chloromethane and our hydrogen what? Chloride. Like we said, the reaction will keep on going on till all the hydrogen in the system are used up. So this is the mechanism of reaction. Thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe to our channel if you've not. Make sure you also share this video to your friends, like, and also comment your questions in the comment button. Thank you.